Okay. So thanks for inviting me alongside Peter. And yes, we have been working on this for coming up to 18 months, I guess, shortly. So yes, and things have changed drastically. I get daily emails from Peter. Have you read this? Have you heard this? Things changing. Anyway, we'll get straight into it. So to introduce me, I'm from Sheffield, Hallam University. I'm an associate professor there, learning and teaching, and a national teaching fellow. And I've been interested in technology enhanced learning for a good couple of decades now.
And that's me. I'm now in my third career. I was a teaching academic. I then moved into the dark side of education development. Then I took early retirement and have been an education consultant ever since. And generative AI seems to be keeping me going at the moment. Sue?
A little publication that's due out early next month, so not too far away, is a co-edited book that we've written with Jenny Lawrence, Stephen Powell, and some amazing other people who've contributed chapters to this edition. So, little plug there for our book. So there's a lot of slides in here, so we're going to skip through them given the time, but obviously we can share the slides afterwards, and there'll be things that you might want to peruse in your own time afterwards. So these are things that we're going to briefly cover, looking at how the software is developed very quickly, how we need to develop our skills, our ongoing skills to keep up with those changes, and how we need to implement a university-wide strategy and what that might look like, and we'll share that with you.
Okay, a quick race through the new software because you'll be relieved to know that it changed last week. We put this slide in because one of the questions we've had from various audiences we've talked to is how much technology do you need in order to get to grips with generative AI? And the answer is you need to be able to speak, talk, or type, because the new interface is everyday human language. So if you're talking to students about what the implications of this is, how much technology do you need to know? We think you need to know something about the kind of structure of the technology and how it works in very general terms, but the basic interface is your voice. Okay. And the other thing I think they really need to get across to students about generative AI, and the book there is an example of how it's being used in industry at the moment, and that's probably the most recent book that we've come across, is that it's all about pattern creation. It's all about probabilities, giving you the most probable answer, which may, of course, not be true. Okay. And there's another interesting area, which is the fact that even the people who have invented and developed this technology don't necessarily understand what is going on underneath the hood. And you'll come across the phrase emergent capabilities. In other words, the software has done something which has surprised us, which we didn't expect. And you'll either be interested or desperately concerned by that quote in the middle of that slide. Okay, so if you start looking at what's been happening over the last year, there's been enormous change. We started off with ChatGPT, the model of the large language model, was it not? Except we now have hundreds of them. There are literally on the market now hundreds of large language models, of which ChatGPT is only one example. And we also have different sizes and levels coming about, and we'll say a bit more about that in a minute. There's also the emergence of both the paid subscriptions and free offerings, and the difference between paid and free is an issue that we want to come back to. We've also now got it integrated in virtually everything we do. So it's in all the Microsoft apps, it's in all the Google apps, it's in your email, it's in Alexa, it's in Siri. More or less every everyday application now has some AI into it. And what the industry is trying to move us towards is to have our own agents, our own assistants, our own study buddies who will accompany us at every point of the day and night. And the other major event is this idea of multimodal, the idea that it's not just text to text anymore, it's text to image, it's text to video, it's text to audio, it's text to computer game, and back again. We can use this technology to analyze images. So that's some of the main developments on the software side. On the hardware side, you'll be perhaps pleased, I don't know, to know that it's now coming to your mobile if it's not there already. Okay. And in the last week, we've had announcements from OpenAI, from Google, from Microsoft. We've got Amazon upgrading Alexa. We've got Meta offering a new AI. We have no idea what that's going to, what sort of impact that's going to have, and all sorts of new video and audio tools. We'd just like to mention a few of those in the next couple of slides. Okay. So the first announcement was this new version of ChatGPT, GPT-4o, and O stands for omnimodal. In other words, it can take text, it can take audio, it can take video, etc., etc. And the particular things, it's obviously much faster than the previous model. Particular things to highlight is that the voice mode, that you can talk to it, and you can also talk to it in a much more conversational style. So you can interrupt it, which is really quite satisfying. So if it's giving you an explanation, you can say stops and you can start again, or you can ask it to explain differently. So it feels much more conversational. We think that's a kind of major change. And you've also now got the free model is in fact the most sophisticated model. There will be extra facilities for those of us who are giving out our $20 a month or whatever it is. But the free model effectively is very, very good in terms of what it can do. Okay. Google came along a couple of days later to say, we want our AI to be in everything that Google does. And there's a short but quite illuminating interview that on the right-hand side of that screen, which you can have a look at. It's only about 8 minutes long, but it gives you the idea of what the AI industry is trying to get us to do. Okay. Then Microsoft came along a day or so afterwards to sell us a new variety of PC, which has effectively AI capability there automatically. So you don't have to worry about finding it. It's there. It's embedded in the machine. And various other things that they announced. One particular thing we thought of was important at the bottom of the page. They've opened a partnership with the Khan Academy. If you've not used that before, it started out as a maths online tutoring. It's now started to develop use of AI. It's developing this idea of a study buddy, a tutor who will talk you through. It won't offer you the straight answer. It will talk you through how to get to the answer. And it's a really interesting kind of development. And the important thing about this partnership with Microsoft is that they're saying they will be able to offer this free to every teacher in the USA. So is that the future we're heading towards? Okay. And there's the spec and some details where you can find details of this new type of PC that Microsoft wants us all to buy. It's quite a high spec PC. It's also around £1,000. So have we just created yet another digital divide? Okay. And there's more to come. So if we'd like to come back next month, because the Apple announcement is coming in June the 10th there, and we're expecting all sorts of stuff from Apple because Apple have been a bit quiet lately, and they're about to come back and we suspect deliver a riposte, shall we say, to all the stuff that's coming out of Microsoft and Google. So by the end of next month, by the end of June, I think we'll have a very clear idea of the landscape that is now emerging, with AI being everywhere, AI being mobile, AI being voice controlled. Okay. So
Okay, so what can we do with GenAI? So we've alluded to the fact that it is multimodal. So this is just to demonstrate to people all the different types of apps that there now are. So we can start with text and it can go to image, audio and video, but we can also do it the other way around. And you can start with the image, text and an image, and it can actually tell you the text, and the same for audio, video. And even now they're introducing things like music and gaming, where you just input text and it starts to create music and games. Another example here is the research cycle. So what are the types of apps now that could be used to help you do some research, or students could do research either for a project or their dissertation. So you can see that there's all sorts of different applications now that can help them to summarize it, find the research papers, transcribe it, proofread it, put it into presentation slides, help them present the data in a different way, and even analyze the data. So there's lots of different things to actually explore and experiment with. So we do feel that, you know, it's changing. It is becoming more accurate, which is allowing us to do more complex tasks, variety of tasks in different modes. And as Peter said earlier, you know, this fact that it's conversational, it's mobile, means that it can be consulted as you're on the move and on the go. And a more complex, detailed answer to that with more information is in that slides there. So, new skills, what do we need to help prepare both our colleagues? Because not everybody's on the same starting page. There are some people that have still not tried any form of generative AI. In fact, some of the presentations we've done just recently, 50% of the audience have never even tried it. Is that the same with our students? Are they experimenting? Many are, possibly not all. But what we think that it can help students do is to develop their questioning techniques. So this idea of Socratic learning and being more critical is the kinds of things that we want them to develop. We want them to develop those skills. It gives students an advantage if they're dyslexic or they're speaking in a different first language, because it can help them to translate things. It can help students to discuss things and inquire collaboratively as well as independently. So there's some really useful applications and things that can be done with generative AI, but we need to have those conversations with them to demonstrate it and to be role models of how it can be used effectively, safely, and ethically. So this is a nice framework from ACAR, the pair framework. So he says that you need to start with a problem, you select the tools, you interact with the tools, and then you reflect on that experience. So this idea of problem formulation is really important for the students before they even touch the generative AI tools, to be able to identify, analyze, and define problems, and then explore, because there are so many different tools, which is going to be the right tool for the job. And then that experimentation is really important. But then individually and collaboratively, you need to critique those tools and then reflect on the outputs that have come from them, because we know that not everything's going to be perfect in the tools. So there has been some research. You may come across the wonderful Louise Drum from Edinburgh Napier. She's done 3 studies now. This is some outputs from her first study. And students are saying that they are using it. They are aware of ethical issues and they're learning to navigate the affordances. They are using it outside of university as a dialogue partner to give them some support, but they are wanting to be taught how to use it well and how to use it for their future work, both in university, but also to prepare them in the workplace to use it for productivity. So there's work to be done there, really. This is a new book that's come out, and it's quite an interesting way to look at the levels of engagement with generative AI. And, you know, you start off as the passive consumer. You don't really understand how it's working and what to put in there, what questions to ask, how do you actually do the prompt engineering, etc., to ones that are experimenting. And then at the far end of that spectrum, where they're actually using it to look and transform problematic situations, so they can identify contradictions. So is there some information that's right and correct? Is it not? How can they make a difference and let people know what is the truth in there? So one of the things that we suggest is the importance of improving prompting and understanding those iterative questions that you need to ask. Also in your prompts, giving the level of detail to get a good answer out. So there's this term garbage in, garbage out. If you put good information in, you're going to get more useful potential information back out again. So this actually gives you some context of all the different things that you might want to put in to give your query the best possible answers.
Okay, we also think that it's really important that everyone has a grasp of the big issues, because there are quite a few big issues about generative AI, and also start thinking about ways to resolve these. Okay, if you're looking for a reasonably short, I think it's about 20 minutes, introduction to generative AI, which starts to raise some of the issues, this is quite a good one. This is from a scientist, Geoffrey Hinton, who was involved in some of the very early technical development and has since, over the last couple of years, has been talking quite a lot about issues and problems and where it might be going. He also appears in the new Netflix film Atlas, which, would you believe, has good AI on one side and bad AI on the other side. And this is Hollywood, so guess who wins? Okay. So we reckon there's 6 main you need to talk to students about. The obvious one starting there, which is illustrating the diagram, hallucinations and inaccuracies. Okay. And I think it's important to recognize that hallucinations are built into the system, because the system is giving you an answer which is most probable. It doesn't necessarily check that that is true, which is why people have often fallen over, because they've produced inaccurate references. Always check GenAI, and particularly check the references. Okay. You've probably come across the predictions. These were a couple from the press of a few months ago. It seems the tone perhaps has changed a bit, but there's still these predictions about the end of the world, and you can find loads of different predictions, particularly on YouTube. The interesting thing from a student point of view is that, of course, they don't all agree. Okay. And here on this next slide, two experts, both very seasoned people from the AI industry, offering rather different perspectives. So according to Mo, bad things will happen on the left-hand side. According to Imad, he wants to produce amplified human intelligence and is a strong advocate for what this technology can do. And there are all sorts of, again, alternative views kicking around, very easily accessible on YouTube, to get a discussion going as to what's this technology really, where's it really taking us? Okay. And of course, there's the issues for employment and employability. There was a rather gloomy prediction that came out recently. And again, there's a range of predictions that you can find. And particularly, we'd suggest that it's a good idea for students to not look not just at the general predictions, but to see if they can find predictions for their particular kind of professional area. Okay. And of course, there's now a whole host of battles going on in courtrooms all over the world. Legislation over copyright, legislation over who owns it. Elon Musk has taken ChatGPT effectively to court to say your company hasn't lived up to its early promises of being open, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, on that example on the right, Google introduced a new image model, and they tried to make it as inclusive as possible. They didn't really think about historical figures. So if you think that's a Viking, then you may want to talk to your local historian. Okay. And particularly, we've been trying to find some new stats on this. Environmental impact. How do you cost the cost of a prompt as opposed to the cost of a conventional or traditional Google search? And that is an issue that we want to explore in more detail. And if anybody's got any good sources on that, we'd love to hear from you. Okay. And that raises the question of costs. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link to an article which talks about the ballooning costs of keeping this technology going as people try to build bigger and bigger databases and what have you. Last week, of course, the position was different, because you had the free version of ChatGPT using an inferior model to the paid version. Now we all use the same. They both use the same underlying model. So what's that consequences is that going to have for the marketplace? Okay. And finally, question of privacy. Recall, which is on the right-hand side, is a new facility from Microsoft. So as you use your Microsoft PC, if you have it switched on, it will record everything you do. So you can find that website that you were looking at 3 days ago, if you wish. Okay. So there are elephants in the room, costs, because we've listened to lots of presentations about AI where costs have never been mentioned, environmental impact is never mentioned. There's also the whole question of exploitation, social justice. There's a reference at the reference list at the end to show you just how much exploitation of human labor is going on in this industry. And of course, that raises the questions of control. Who controls this? OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, they've already fired their chief exec once they rehired him, and now they've closed down their safety department that was looking at some safety issues. So do we trust these folk? Okay. So our final bit is, sorry, Sue.
So I was going to say, so what do we need to do next? So we need to prepare, and one of the things that we're suggesting is that we need to revise and show the workings out. So I've introduced that with my students. We know that generative AI can create an essay report, PowerPoints for them. So I now get the students to create a research log of all the sources, and they need to keep that process of how they're developing their research, and then they can reflect on that and evaluate how effective that was. The alternative is, asking the students to actually use the tools, give a rationale for that, and then reflect on how effective they were they useful, were they not. So taking that forward. So I think one of the things that we need to think about is in the assessment briefs that we give to the students for the things that they've actually got to do, should it clearly state on each one what is acceptable and what is not, so it's transparent and clear, because that information can be suggested in policies, but we all know that they're deep and buried and not always seen by students. So we need to think about what it is that we want our students to do. Is it a no completely, or is it being used a little bit or throughout, etc.? That detail's important.
And this is our final suggestion, which you can apply not just at institutional level, but you can also apply this to course team level. Is everybody clear about the regulations and procedures? Have you got enough professional development going on to bring everybody up to speed? Has the institution got the requisite level of technical development and support? And moving over to the right-hand side, have we got the proper ideas about how we're going to engage students with technology? And the final green block in there is what we call the collaborative sandpit. We think that this whole technology move is an ideal opportunity to involve staff and students working together, collaborating, because nobody knows where this technology is exactly going to go. And particularly given that they've just revised some of the central costs and technology behind it over the last couple of weeks. So where is your collaborative sandpit? Students and staff working together on projects to say, well, where's this technology going to take us? Okay. And just two final quotes, both taken from GPT-4. I think I'm not sentient, number one, and you can read the rest of this quote for yourself. Quote number two, I'm not sentient. I process and generate text based on patterns learned, Now, there you are. Show those two quotes to students and ask them which one they believe. Okay. And finally, we did ask you, we showed you that slide at the beginning, and we showed you two pictures, both based on the same prompt, with the addition of one single word. And we wondered if anybody would ask to volunteer, what did we add to that prompt to create the image at the bottom? Correct. We have Vicky is our prize winner for today. She just put it in the chat. The word was university.
Well done,
Vicky. And one of the things we've been doing quite a lot with staff, students, or what have you, is creating particular images, because it's now getting very good at that, but it's also very bad in some respects in terms of accuracy, but starting to generate stereotypes. So you'll see that we use Scottish education, hence the flags, which is a bizarre, and you'd see an earlier slide in this where we didn't put in, where we used the word UK, and Union Jack started appearing all over the place. So as a device for exploring stereotypes, it's really good.